Hey guys, welcome back to Brian's Mysteries and Adventures on Trail. And today I wanted to talk to you guys about a case that happened this summer and it had a happy ending. I know that a lot of the recent videos have been pretty rough and sad, and I wanted to talk to you guys about a case that ended up having a happy ending and really was a miracle in many ways. But before we get into the video, I just wanted to go over something real quick. In every one of my videos since I've started, if you look next to the title of the video, there's a down arrow. If you click that arrow, it opens up the description to the video, which has all my sources. It has information on the case. It has information on the detectives that are working the case or who worked the case, special photo credits. I only mention this because, almost in every video people ask about sources or different things, and in every one of my videos you can find it there. And there's links for further reading if you wish to do further reading on that particular case. Okay guys, so in today's video our case takes us to the state of Washington, northern Washington, in the North Cascades, which is here in the United States at the Middle Fork Snoqualmie Trailhead. And I'm going to have different maps up through this whole video. This case is about Andrew Devers, and this guy is just awesome. I mean, I read about this case, and this guy he's just such a great guy. I mean, he's just so upfront. He's so honest. He went hiking back in June in the North Cascades on the Middle Fork Valley near Snoqualmie, the trailhead. And he was just going out for a day hike. He literally had nothing on him except a little bit of water and 2 cans of Mountain Dew. This was not an overnight trip, and this was in the middle of June, around June 15th, or June 18th, excuse me. And so there was a lot of snow melt going on, and the temperatures when he set out were roughly in the 70s, which was on a Friday, but by that weekend the temperatures had climbed up into the 90s, and by the Monday they were in the hundreds. So not only was this causing crazy snow melt, but it was pretty oppressive being out there in that kind of weather. So in any event, he started out on his hike and he was just going along, and according to him, he reported that the trail looked like a trail, but then it got really dense and thick like this, and he said he was passing up against brush and trees, and he couldn't really see the trail, but he didn't really think anything of it. He just thought this was the trail. It had grown over. He was just going along for about 45 minutes to an hour, and just kind of doing his thing, and he just happened to look back, he said, and he said the trail was gone. There was just no more trail, and he stated at this point he knew he was lost. He had absolutely no idea where he was. He said at this point he could still hear voices in the distance, so he started yelling out in hopes to try and find them. He was calling out, he was saying that he was lost. And what he said he came to realize was, and which is very true, is that the water, any body of water, especially in the summer in the heat, the water will distort the sound, and it can make it sound like it was a lot closer, voices, etc., than they are. And so unfortunately for him, that led to nothing. I mean, no one really heard or responded to his cries for help. And so he just carried on. But as it grew later in the day, the full weight of the idea of actually having to spend the night out there was starting to weigh on him. And as the darkness set in, he literally reported that he was absolutely terrified. And I can imagine how scary it would be if you're inexperienced and you have no gear. Terrified. I mean, he had no idea what he was going to do. And remember, this guy had no overnight gear. He didn't have a tent. He didn't have a sleeping bag. He didn't have any extra clothes. I mean, I can't imagine being out in the middle of nowhere and having just gone out for a day hike, having a couple cans of soda, not to mention now being in an area that you're completely unfamiliar with. Thankfully, due to that heat wave coming through, as I stated before, it kept the temperatures at night much warmer than the average. Not only that, Andrew said that during the day there was a nice breeze that blew through, which helped keep him cool, and he said it made him able to keep on moving. Andrew was also very candid, and he is not an experienced hiker at all. He said that in the last several years he'd only been on less than a dozen hikes. So he was very honest and upfront. He said, so here's a guy that's inexperienced and out in the middle of nowhere with no gear, and having to go through nights alone. Thankfully, on the third day he found some berries, which he picked. He kept some in his pocket, and he used those as a food source but that was all he really had. He said that because of the extreme heat, he just had to risk drinking from the river, even though he knew that it could be contaminated with bacteria. And this is true. I mean, even doesn't matter how clean the water looks, there's always a possibility that there's Giardia in it or anything. And, you know, if he had gotten something like that, that would have been just even more of a nightmare. He reported that he had to stay close to the river, and on certain days he could only go so far because it was just so hot. And on one day, he heard a helicopter go over, and he said it was just like a punch in the gut because, I mean, can you imagine you're trapped out in the middle of nowhere trying to find your way out? You see rescue helicopters going out, and at this point there was a heavy search going on for Andrew. They were out for looking for him for over a week, and you know, he tried to wave his arms and whatnot, but you know, obviously he couldn't get its attention. So this went on for the next 5 days. This poor guy was just out there wandering around, trying to find his way out, having to spend the night with no gear, nothing, just, you know, lying up against a tree. Roughly on day number 6 or 7, he thought he heard voices, and he thought that they were real, because he reported at this point mental psychosis was setting in, and just the mental, you know, hurdles that he was having to overcome. Because when you're out there in that kind of situation, after a certain amount of time, you do start to lose hope. And I can't imagine what it's like. Well, he heard these voices, so he decided to climb a tree. Well, when he got up on the tree, he reported he saw like a bunch of acorns, and in his mind, that meant that there was a trail nearby. Now, I don't know why he thought that. I mean, I wouldn't have. That's just amazing that he thought that, because there was actually a trail. Like, he got down off of the tree. This is actually the trail and area where he was. And he went and he finally found a 2-foot wide path that he realized was a trail. So he continued to follow that. And on day number 8, he just slept right on the trail in hopes that if anybody was walking by, they'd see him. The next morning, a trail runner, a woman that was running on the trail. Now, at this point, I just want to mention that they had already called off the searches. So unfortunately, the search teams had called off their search, but you know, there were still people out and about. And a woman running the trail that morning, she found Andrew sleeping there, and she saved him. She contacted the authorities, and they came and took him to the hospital. And aside from some, you know, malnutrition and some muscle degeneration, he was in pretty good shape. And I just thought this was just such an amazing case, because yeah, he was out there for almost 9 days. And yes, people have survived longer, but so many things had to come into place for this for him to get out. I mean, the water had to be clean, free of Giardia and other bacteria. I mean, if he had gotten sick, I mean, he would have been dehydrated in a day or two, and it would just been a nightmare. The temperatures back, you know, in that part of June are usually much colder at night, especially in the North Cascades. But it just happened to be this heat wave that came through and kept it really warm at night. And yes, it was very hot during the day, but he said that because there wasn't a lot of humidity, he just stayed by the river, drank water, and was able to press on each day. And he was also able to find those berries. So there was just so many things that came into play that I don't know, I just found to be miraculous. The fact that he decided to climb that tree that one day and saw some acorns and just thought to himself, oh, there might be a trail there. And there happened to be the trail there. And then that woman just jogging along happened to find him. That part of the trail was basically closed off. Not a lot of people were on it because there's a lot of snow melt and other things. So I just found this to be, you know, a very heartwarming case. Obviously, it sucked that he got lost, and that kind of trauma does take, you know, some time to get over. But he has such a good attitude about it. He says that he's just such a nice guy. I mean, if you listen to his interviews and things he says, he's not going to give up hiking, and he hopes to become a volunteer SAR worker to help, you know, return the favor of all the people that helped him. And that just, I don't know, that just warms my heart. And the fact that he says that, you know, it's been hard being back in regular civilization. And it is. I mean, it's that kind of trauma when you're lost and you think your life might be at stake. It's really tough. But he's just got such a wonderful attitude, and he's really taken all this in stride. And I just wish him all the best. And I really hope that, you know, he continues hiking. And I'm so happy that he was able to get out of this relatively unscathed, and I know that he'll be able to overcome the mental hurdles, and wishing him all the best. And I'd like to dedicate this video to Andrew Devers, wishing you all a bright future. I want to thank everybody for watching as always, and if you guys have any suggestions or cases you'd like me to cover, please send me a comment or an email and I will do my best to cover them. And I want to say thank you to co.ag for providing the background music. Today's video featured titled A New Life.